That's called Saga of the Defeated Male. This next one, the character in it took a sort of a different turn. When I was 14, I started doing a lot of drugs, which is, rite of passage on the Gulf of Mexico. The first thing you do is you get, your drugs, and then you get your harder drugs and your harder drugs. And by 14, I'd worked my way up to just acid, and then maybe I was going to try the heroin stuff. But then a friend of mine, another 14-year-old kid, died of a heroin overdose. And I realized I was too much like him. I had no impulse control. I was kind of like ADD, jittery, just, I'll take more. So I thought, how can I save myself? And then I remember those Christian people saying, do you want to be saved? So I thought, yeah, I do. I don't want to die of a drug overdose at age 14. So I got saved. I went to the church, and I went up the front, and they tried to get me to speak in tongues. It didn't go very well. And then I was saved, so I started going to this church, and they said, well, there's rules. And I thought, oh, shit, that's not going to work. Yeah, you have to go out and you have to preach the gospel to people, right? The gospel. Go out and preach the gospel. And I said, okay, how do I do that? And they said, don't worry, we've got a guy who's really good at it. He's going to be your witnessing buddy. So we would ride in the bus out to the beach where the people wore the sinful bathing suits. And we would witness to them. And my problem was that I thought that the sinful people were a little bit smarter than the church people. And, I'd say, would you want to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And they'd say, well, do you really believe that God created evil and Satan and all that? And I'd be like, man, that's a good point. And then the professional witnessing guy who was really good at it, who could go to an atheist convention and bring 50 atheists to the church to get saved, he'd rush over and kind of correct my rhetoric and all. And I have to say that I resented him more and more. He was so good at winning souls, and I couldn't even get the dishwasher at the restaurant that I worked at to get saved. And the dishwasher he smelled of fecal matter. And I thought, man, if I can't get him, I can't get anybody. And then I heard that the witnessing champion of our church, that they had picked him to go to Rayford Penitentiary to witness to the prisoners there. And Rayford Penitentiary, if you don't know, is the maximum security prison outside of Tallahassee. It's a bad place, and you don't want to go there, except maybe to witness to people, I guess. So he went in the church bus, and he was real cocky, because he could talk anybody into Jesus. He was like God's greatest salesman. And he went there, and I heard that the guards were impressed with his proselytizing rhetoric, so they sent him to death row. And he got to preach to the death row inmate. And when he came back, he had a kind of like a nervous little twitch, and he didn't witness so good anymore. And he would never talk about what happened when the death row murderer gave him his testimony. And so me, with my fertile imagination, I started imagining what the death row guy said to him. And this is the song. It's called Prisoner's Dilemma. It's the prisoner talking. As a kid I was forsaken, nobody helping me. I heard life was for the taking, so I took all I could see. I terrorized this little town, just doing as I pleased, thinking if I am a wicked child, well then that's just what the good Lord made me. That's just what the good Lord made me. And I heard Jesus Christ was the best friend that I never had. Well, I called his name from time to time, but he said nothing back. I don't need no silent partner, I'm not programmed to believe. For if I am a sinner, inner man. I guess that's just what the good Lord made me. Yeah, that's just what the good Lord made me. At 21, I killed a man. Later that year, I killed again. This last time, I left a witness, and that's when the police, they finally brought me in. Now I'm doing life in this prison, but thankfully I see that if I am a prisoner, well then that's just what the good Lord made me. Yeah, that's just what the good Lord made me. So listen, my Christian brother, I do thank you for stopping here. But the rotten tooth of my wasted youth makes one truth crystal clear. For no matter what my crimes, what I do or choose to be it righteous man or murderer, well I guess that's just what the good Lord made me. Yeah, that's just what the good Lord made me. You might claim the lame can walk, you might say the blind can see, but I know in my heart I'm just what the good Lord made me. All right. How am I doing on the time there? Because I lose track of time up here.
9:22.
And when am I supposed to quit?
I think you got 20 minutes.
20 minutes? I didn't rehearse that much. All right. All right. Well, then I can tell a long, drawn-out story. I told this 2 nights ago when I was over there at Sine promoting my novel. I have a novel out. It's called Incidental Contact, and I have copies for sale if you want to get one tonight. I have 15 copies. I don't know, there's a lot of people here. We sold 25 here tonight because the show was so damn good. Anyway, I told this story, so if you were at the show the other night, I see a couple people that were there. If you were there, just forgive me. The details may change a little bit because none of this is based in truth. I'm just making it up as I go. When I was in my late 30s, I had a psychological breakdown, and soon thereafter, my body started also stopping functioning. I got sicker and sicker, and I had to give up my apartment. I was living in New York, driving the cab up there. I ended up stranded in North Florida, and if you're clinically depressed and sick, I really don't recommend that particular tactic. I was outside of Pensacola, a little town called Ensley, which I called Ensley of the Earthly. I lived in a house that a friend of mine had bought. He was going to fix it up, so it was not livable really. And there was no phone, and there was no radio, and there was no TV, and I was impoverished. I didn't have a car, and I was just trapped because in Ensley you don't walk around because the roving bands of pit bulls and crack dealers and stuff. Ensley's rough. So I was stuck in this house, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a hard time walking, and I was, like I say, I was impoverished. Couldn't get a job. This is how you end up homeless. I was right on the verge of that because I couldn't get a job because I was so sick, and I couldn't do anything to help myself in any way, and everything I tried just was a mess. And I was stuck in this house. There was nothing to do, and the days stretched out, and finally on the back porch I found this stack of old newspapers from a couple years earlier. The house had been abandoned for years, And the stack of newspapers, and out of desperation, I started reading the Pensacola News Journal, which if you're clinically depressed, do not read the Pensacola News Journal. It's a Gannett Press right-wing screed. And oh my God, it was awful. And but I forced myself to read it. And I read the salient parts. I didn't read the ads for pennies and stuff like that, but I read the articles, and I figured there had to be something in there of value, but there wasn't until the fifth pass through the first newspaper. There was about 20 of them. On the fifth pass through, way in the back where the classifieds are, like people wanting to buy a boat and people looking for, chicken pluckers and stuff like that. There was a little column that I hadn't noticed, and it was called the Felony Report. And what caught my eye really wasn't the Felony Report headline on it. It was the guy, the first name. His name was Vankish Ome Golden. And I like names, right? And I think about origins and genealogy, and I had to think that this was an Irish Jewish black man. And I was thinking, Vankish Ome Golden. Well, what did he do? Well, what he did was he got arrested for playing his guitar naked on the side of Highway 98, which runs through Pensacola. And as I read the words, I felt this kinship with him. I said, yes, I too, Vankish, would be playing my guitar naked on the side of Highway 98 if my name was Vankish Ome Golden. And I felt like this kinship that I hadn't felt. I was alone in the world, but I felt this kinship with this character. And I thought, well, I hope he commits another crime so I get to hear from him again. But I would underestimated the richness of the culture in Pensacola, which is a really poor realm, because just two names down was I.P. Rainwater. The Rainwaters are a Seminole family, and there was Brown Vesey Rainwater, which is that sounds like something that you would dip someone in a Stephen King novel, Brown Vesey Rainwater. So I was really excited. I found these two people that I liked their names, I.P. Rainwater and then Emma Bobby Skull. And I just and then Shavette Shingle. Shavette Shingle would be a person to go out and cut the rug with on a Saturday night. He would have that razor blade in his sock, And so I rushed out onto the back porch and opened up another newspaper, and there were more names. And they were such great names. They were full of life and color. And my favorites ended up being the Dorch brothers, Step Dorch and Wall Dorch. There were 5 brothers, and they were all named after building parts. Step Dorch and Wall Dorch were the criminals, and this is an archetypal poor Southern family. They were the criminals, and then 2 of the other brothers, Porch Dorch and Ceiling Dorch, they were preachers, and then one was a plumber. I don't know his name. Anyway, I sort of developed this extended family, and it gave me kind of like a reason to live, because I didn't have much at that point. And so I amassed all of these names, and while that was happening, I started writing songs. And I wrote a song called Perfect Day to Chase Tornadoes, and a couple other songs that ended up getting me a record deal. So all of a sudden, David Byrne is calling me, and I got this record deal, and I'm still in the house there in Ensley. And all of a sudden, this British newspaper sends over a journalist named Richard Grant. Now, you may know him because he wrote Dispatches from Pluto, which is a New York Times bestseller. Back then, he was just a journalist. And he flew to interview me because I was the token, weird, Southern eccentric guy who had a new record coming out that David Byrne had discovered. And it was so cool. He got there, and we were talking about stuff, and he said, well, I have to tell you that after I leave here in 2 days, I'm going to interview Annie Proulx, the shipping news lady, the Pulitzer Prize winner. And he said, and when I told her I was coming to see you, she said she had heard about you, and she really wanted to, get to know you. It's like intimately? What? And I had been at the bottom of the world, and suddenly I was talking to a Pulitzer Prize person. And so he said, do you want me to give anything to Annie Proulx as a gift from you? And I was like, oh, hell yes. So I gave her the name of all the felons from Pensacola. 400 I had at that point. And she put them in her next novel. And this, I think, my friends, is the American dream at its highest. One day you're in the felony report in Pensacola, Florida, playing your guitar naked on the side of Highway 98, and the next day you are a character in an Annie Proulx novel. This is beautiful. This is a reminder to you that if your situation seems dire, anything can happen if you just tighten up all the bolts on the engine of reality. You know? Anyway, so I was so grateful to my friends, the felons, that I wrote a song for them called the Felony Report Song. It goes like this. I'm back behind the liquor store. I'm chatting with some ne'er-do-wells, swapping tall tales, just killing time. It's a lazy old morning, then without warning, the trash talking starts as fisticuffs break out. First Blueberry John, he slugs Ram Jam Jones. Then Bonky Chomay jumps on Titus Stone. Red White runs, as does Guppy Troop. Jimmy Ray speaks, starts howling at Kizzy Coo. I guess irrational names sometimes lead the name bearers to commit irrational crimes. Oh, what were you thinking, Miss Myrtleine Wink, stealing those glass eyes from the drugstore display? What were you thinking? And Catman Windigiff, you've been charged with petty theft, plus criminal mischief for ransacking your best friend's place. I went to school with Catman. Royal Hand, what a grand old name you have, but you've been an inmate far too many times. Romeo Maytag, your name made me smile till you got arrested for molesting a child. I guess irrational names sometimes lead the name bearers to commit irrational crimes. So much depends on the red wheelbarrow place, time tied in simple chance. This house of cards that forms our fate, it comes tumbling down in tiny increments. And as the police arrive and I slip away, well, I'm downright thankful that my folks displayed some sense. Thank you, Mom and Dad. They named me simple, not after some big string, no lifelong millstone hung around my neck. When the tongues of man became undone, mankind rebelled, and just like you might expect, for take the burden of name, add some cockeyed aim, then upon that framework let experience collect. You get irrational names that sometimes lead the name bearers to commit irrational crimes. Them irrational crimes become irrational